Appropriations Committee meeting, and first thing up is roll call.
For October 31st, Joint Appropriations Committee, Senator Driscoll.
Here.
Senator Guru.
Here.
Senator Larson.
Here.
Senator French.
Here.
Representative Alleman.
Present.
Representative Angeles.
Here.
Representative Haroldson.
Here.
Representative Pendergraph.
Here.
Representative Sherwood.
Here.
Representative Smith.
Here.
Co-Chairman Bear.
Here.
Chairman Salazar.
Here.
You have a quorum.
Thank you. So the first thing up this morning is the Wyoming State Forestry Division, and we have Kelly Norris, our Wyoming State Forester here. Welcome, you and your team. Good to see you here this morning. And I will give it to you.
All right. Good morning, Chairman Salazar, Chairman Bear, and members of the Joint Appropriations Committee. My name is Kelly Norris, and I'm the Wyoming State Forester. I'll have those sitting with me introduce themselves. Jared, do you want to go?
Jared DeLay, Assistant State Forester, Fire Management Officer.
Chris Volbeck, Assistant Fire Management Officer, Aviation.
Okay, we're going to kick off our presentation providing you with the 2025 fire season update, followed by a financial update on the emergency fire suppression account, and finish with a national wildfire policy update. So far in 2025, Wyoming has had 1,560 wildfires that burned approximately 209,870 acres. It is important to remember that these numbers are still growing. We had a few fires just last week here in Wyoming. Fire conditions can still occur in late fall, early winter. For example, we just received a notice from NOAA this morning that portions of Wyoming are expected to be in elevated fire weather this Sunday. About 79% of the fires reported were on state and private lands, with 26% of the total lands burned, or approximately 54,750 acres. Even though Wyoming did not have a fire season equal to last year, we did have a fire season above the 10-year average with fires and acres burned. Counties took fire risks seriously this summer, with 21 counties going into some level of fire restrictions August through September. The U.S. Forest Service and the BLM also coordinated with local counties going into their fire restrictions as well. We have 18 emergency fire suppression account approved fires from 8 different counties and 4 on state trust lands. Currently, we have committed approximately $21 million from the EFSA to cover wildfire suppression costs. Wyoming did receive 1 FMAG declaration fire, the Red Canyon Fire. 61% of the fire burned on private and state lands, all within Hot Springs County. The fire was the #1 priority fire in the nation for 4 days in a row. Our aviation assets were busy this season. Wyoming Helitack program responded to 52 fires in 8 counties and had over 200 flight hours. Our medium helicopter responded to 17 fires in 6 different counties. Between the 2 helicopters, we delivered 219,000 gallons of water to fires across the state. Our contracted single-engine air tankers responded to a remarkable 76 wildfires in 18 different counties in Wyoming. The seats dropped 189,550 gallons of retardant and an additional 32,000 gallons of water. We started the fire season out with 2 of our seats at the Worland BLM seat base and 2 seats at the Casper tanker base. State Forestry's new seasonal seat base manager worked closely with Wyoming BLM and Campbell County Fire to set up a new seat base reload site at the Gillette Airport. From late August through the end of September, the 2 seats from Worland were bumped over and based in Gillette. This summer, State Forestry's new helibase building broke ground, and we are coordinating with the State Construction Department as the project continues for completion timeline for late summer next year. I want to stop here and take a moment to share with the committee how significant the additional aviation was to State Forestry's ability to coordinate statewide fire response. So from here, I'm going to let our Chris Volbeck take it from here. Okay, go for it.
Thank you, State Forester Norris. First of all, I'd like to thank the committee for the opportunity to be here. And I would also like to, at this time, to thank the Joint Appropriations Committee and all of Wyoming's legislative group for your continued support of the Wyoming Fire Service. It was this group that championed the doubling of State Forestry's aviation program last year, and I would like to show you a little bit of how that investment in the state has paid off. If you recall, the bill increased our capacity by adding 2 single-engine air tankers or seats, an additional contract helicopter, a full-time employee, a helicopter manager, and 4 additional seasonal firefighters. Having these assets allowed us to provide initial attack response across the entire state with a much greater coverage than ever before. If I could have you take a look at the slide in your handouts that is dated July 2nd. I think we've got it up as well. On this particular day, there were 5 fires that occurred throughout the day. Because we had additional aircraft and personnel, we were able to respond to each of these fires without having to abandon one because it was deemed a lesser priority. You'll notice that both sets of the seats, the Worland ones and the Casper-based seats, went to multiple fires along with the Type 3 helicopter. Multiple fires in multiple days in the same day, a common theme, and I will circle back to that here in a little bit longer. The second slide, well, first in this one slide, if you look at the span of where we were able to hit, the far western part of the state, the Alkali Fire, which is in Teton County, and in this particular case, outside of Douglas and Converse County with the Spring Creek Fire. And still also, at this point in time, the seats that we had in the northern part of the state were located in Worland, not in Gillette, but still responded to Campbell County as well. Now, if we could step to the slide that is September 10th, this paints a very similar capability response. 5 fires that day with all of the state's aircraft responding, and again, multiple aircraft responding to multiple fires. However, as robust as this level of response is, there were 19 times this season in the state of Wyoming where aircraft were ordered for fires and those orders went UTF'd or unable to be filled. And that was due to our assets being already committed to other incidents. I'd like to point out with these 2 slides, if you look at the names of these incidents.
Mr. Co-Chair?
Thank you. Sorry to interrupt. I just want to highlight what you just said. So 19 times that we were unable to fill those demands for aircraft assets. Is that correct?
Mr. Chairman, that is correct.
And could you also elaborate just a little bit as to where in the state those 19 requests were made?
Yes, sir. I have I've had the Casper Dispatch Center provided me with the list of all of the UTF requests that came through. It is a shotgun across the state, from Yellowstone Park to Teton National Park, to also supporting large fires that already had a lot of assets on them. Rarely was it during initial attack. It was more along the lines of large fire support and pre-positioned requests from other agencies.
That's helpful. Thank you. Thank you.
Yes, sir. Let's see, okay. Again, if you take a look at these slides and you identify or look at the names of these incidents, most likely you will not recognize those names because they were all handled during initial attack. They did not develop into anything where we would be familiar with, like a Mullen Fire or an elk. Those, forgive me. I think the total cost for our incidents on each one of these days for all 6 assets to respond to 5 fires was $73,000 and $72,000 respectively, which is a small cost if one of these incidents had escaped initial attack and had run into multiple day of response, a team being ordered or requested, which would run in the hundreds of thousands of dollars, potentially into the millions, as we saw with an elk, a Pleasant Valley, Pack Trail, and house straw fires. I'd mentioned earlier the multiple fires in multiple days. I think there's some stats here that are quite interesting. The Type 3 helicopter, as State Forester Norris mentioned, went to 52 fires this season. They had 10 days with multiple fires. There were 9 days with at least 2 fires and 1 day with 3 fires. The Type 2 helicopter, the brand new asset for this year, had 4 days with 2 fires that it responded to. The single engine air tankers out of Casper had 8 days with 2 fires, and the Worland/Gillette seats had 9 days, 4 days with 2 fires, 4 days they responded to 3 fires, and 1 day they responded to 4 fires across the state. This added capacity allowed us to pre-position our resources and helicopters and seats to areas of higher fire danger without compromising the rest of the state. The opposite is also true. Being able to send multiple aircraft, or all 6, to one incident to increase that level of horsepower gave ground resources the ability to extinguish those fires even faster. Either together or standalone, my opinion, the level of response from the aviation side was remarkable. We have a video now, and I hope that it'll be able to relay. This is from the Type 2 helicopter, the brand new asset added this year. An interesting story, this was dispatched to southwest corner of Johnson County, very remote, rugged area, and our aircraft, which was based at Casper, was the first asset on scene. This particular helicopter has a fixed tank that carries 350 gallons. It fills out of a snorkel as little or deep a water as 17 inches. It can fill that 350-gallon tank. It's able to go directly attack on the fire, and in this particular case, this was a grass fire that was creeping its way into the timber, and as the first asset on scene, it was able to knock the fire down before it was able to get into the timber and get established and become one of those other large, costly fires. And this is just one example out of all of the times that our assets responded.
It was also the last day of contract.
That is correct. In closing, I truly believe that the impact that this committee and the legislative body has had is really increasing our capacity to respond to new and multiple fires concurrently. And it has just greatly increased the protection of Wyoming's forest rangelands and, most importantly, its citizens. I thank you again for your continued support and gladly stand for questions.
Great, thank you. Any questions from the committee? Yes, Senator Guru.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Chris, good morning. So, given the nature of fires this year and the assets that we put forward, the air assets that we put forward, how was the mix as far as, you talked about, and it was a good report on how they were used, but as far as the overall picture, dollars spent and the results, how would you characterize it? Did we hit the mark?
Mr. Chairman, Senator, it's a moving target, of course. A fire season is different from the fire season. You look at the last 3 seasons that we've had. 3 years ago, it was super quiet, and we were wondering how we could keep these guys employed, and can we help our other states that are in trouble. The previous year, we would take anything and everything that you would throw at us for assistance. And then this year, with being slightly above average, I think our level of response was very impressive. Being in having new assets, the single-engine air tankers were familiar to the state already, and they were utilized heavily. I think with bringing in our restricted medium helicopter, it took time for the first responders to really work into the utilization of that asset. I think it was underutilized, and that's just due to unfamiliarity with the program and how that thing can actually provide the support. I think for the bang for the buck, we were able to get as much assets out in the field as possible.
Follow up? Yeah, so many things. Like I think of a sewer system. You can't build a sewer system for the average day. You've got to build it for maximum capacity. This isn't that way. We can't throw enough money to take care of what happened 2 years ago, knowing that was a one-off year. Hopefully, that doesn't become the new normal. But we'll see. But I guess that's the trick as we talk about, and for this committee to try to figure out the combination between ground assets and air assets, hotshot teams versus that spin. What we can do with those air assets when we don't need them as far as be able to move them out, and how that whole little symphony works together is the answer that this group's going to be looking for as we come into funding. So I know you know that. I guess that's probably a wouldn't you agree question.
Mr. Chair, Senator, absolutely. And I think that the other aspect, that as we look for 2 years ago, and if we were to try to plan or build for that, it would be excessive and unnecessary.
Right.
Would we have taken it 2 years ago? Absolutely. However, I think if we can right-size it, the fires that we responded to from the aviation side this year, in order to support the ground resources that were there, I think that was the trick. That was the part that really gave time for assets that are out there to get to the ground. It takes people on the ground to utilize the material that the aviation assets are delivering. Putting just water or retardant on a fire or adjacent, you need somebody down there to stir it and work it. And so it is that mix of assets that adds to the effectiveness of each part.
And I'll follow up, Mr. Chairman, Senator. It's also important to remember that there's quite a bit of flexibility in the contracting system that we have. So, for example, last year, we kept our aviation on all the way through to the end of October. This year, because of weather and weather condition changes, when we saw a decrease in the needs, we released all of our aviation contracts by the end of September instead. So there is quite a bit of flexibility in the system to manage the amount that's needed. And when we move forward with our request for proposals when aviation, we're going to be looking for that specific flexibility that we can use in contractors.
Thank you.
Sure.
Mr. Chairman, thank you. I see you've got your back covered pretty well. Thank you to all you folks out there in the back wearing fire uniforms. Kind of fun to see you have that. And that's my question, kind of goes out a little, and you brushed off. We've talked about the air assets, and we've talked about our hotshot teams. Are we providing adequate for equipment and ground people out there? I know, like our county, we're still using a lot of 1950s type equipment. Are we providing, and they may need to come answer that to some degree themselves, but are we providing adequate support to that ground in? I'm looking at trying to figure out how we bring this package, and you guys have done a phenomenal job working with local assets and doing it, but are we providing what we need to them? Because I'm trying to figure out how we string all these pieces together to make it, because I get to see it, we live in the country, and our local guys tend to take incredible good care of us, but we run pretty short at times with guys, particularly to watch fires after they've been put out, as we seem to have a recurring problem. Guys like me go to bed and don't get up early enough, or maybe get up too late. So are we providing adequate resources back to that back end of the world for you folks? Thank you.
Mr. Chairman, what I am going to recommend remind the committee of a handout that we provided to you all back in June. It has pretty important charts showing you the state's capacity when it comes to wildland fire suppression response from state forestry. You can recall that Wyoming is responsible, state and private lands is just under 33 million acres, which is pretty substantial if you take a look at some of the other states like Utah, Nevada, and South Dakota, who are less than double digits, or Idaho. And then if you roll down, you can see the total personnel, state forestry, fire agencies that are agencies, and you can see that Wyoming ranks the lowest of all the other states in permanent positions, as well as seasonal. And then we have contract employees as well that the other states don't have. And then if you go to the next page, it focuses just on fire personnel. We have 7 individuals that we would claim as firefighters out of our staff. We have 8 seasonals and 16 staff among us here that carry the state's administration and support to the counties. The next closest state is South Dakota with 37 permanent firefighters. So we have 30 less than the next closest state for permanent personnel for firefighters. And I do want to remind this committee, as we had shared earlier, that all of these states also provide firefighting benefits that are equal to our federal agencies at some level that we do not. And then if you keep going down, you can go and take a look at the hand crew. And we have, as you said, one hand crew, and we're going to continue, and I'm in my report, and we're going to continue talking about, in our update, about the smoke buster crew. But as you can see, we utilized New Mexico's modules. We utilized South Dakota modules this last year when we brought them in from pre-positioning, and you can take a look at where the hand crews line up across the western states. And then if you roll to the next page, there's engines.
So can I ask a question? Can you, just for 60 seconds, can you update me, a lack of benefits? Talk to me about that.
Yes, Mr. Chairman. So we, our state forestry staff are all under foresters, they're forestry. They do not get paid higher for their firefighter qualifications. They do not get hazard pay. They are not in a firefighter retirement package. And so we typically see our staff that we train in fire, leaving us for the federal agencies that provide those type of firefighting benefits that we do not. Mr. Chairman, we would hope we could keep them if we did, because they typically stay in Wyoming. They typically go to the BLM. So I would just, again, point you to that direction, Senator Driscoll, and show you where we're at with what we have for resources, and say that would be where I would take a hard look at in comparison to figure out, you know, what is needed, and then I'm going to let the counties answer the rest of your question for you.
Mr. Chairman, follow up.
Please.
Thank you. Yeah, I kind of had an idea of it. Part of it was the physical, and the other part, what is the Fed's willingness to take felon firefighters?
I think they can.
Yeah. Mr. Chairman, Senator Driscoll, yeah, from my experience, they are able to hire that. I mean, it's just, hire those type of firefighters, it's just, you know, going through the hiring process, and if they have, you know, they're just competing along with everybody else.
What's our ability to use our prison force to develop them into carded firefighters, make them permanent? I'm looking at our hotshot crews, and is there a way, and I've been stealing Lily your thunder, Representative Harrelson, and I really appreciate the efforts you've done. He showed me kind of what he's been doing with you, and, you know, to me, I think we're missing something as far as these felons have an incredibly hard time getting good jobs, and the federal firefighting deal and the state one both really are a good spot for a home, and I'm kind of one of the ones that's willing. I've hired a lot of those type people in my life, and they tend to have problems in their life, but they're great people. And is there a track that we could work on, back to Representative Harrelson, maybe he follows up, figuring out how we keep part of those folks that actually could move from, instead of working at a fast food restaurant, to high-paying fire jobs, and that, you know, they'll come out of the boot camp with their experience to be able to step right into it. Are you guys looking at any of that, or could we help you develop some of that?
Mr. Chairman.
Sorry, Representative Harrelson, stealing on you.
Senator, we will have Representative Harrelson probably share some of the work he's been working on, specifically in that direction when it comes to the inmate program. But yes, there is opportunity through the state. Because we only have 7 firefighters, we don't have a lot of opportunity to hire permanent. There's probably going to be opportunities we've been looking at for when it comes to seasonal work as a step up too. But there is definitely opportunities to go from the smoke busters, because we treat the smoke buster program, when they show up every day, they're showing up for a job. and they have responsibilities, and they're going to do the work they're going to do. And when they come out, it's just making that, bridging that gap and having opportunity with the state of Wyoming and our fire program. So,
Can I call on Representative
oh,
Harrelson?
yep.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So, yeah, so just to kind of a high level so everyone's aware, this last week I did have an opportunity to go up to Newcastle and visit with State Forestry and DOC and tour their facility up there and meet the Smoke Buster crew. And the reality is, and I think what we need to, I'm gonna back up and at the end of this, I'll put a, don't you agree, just so we're legal. But I wanna just say that we were teed up to have a worse year than last year. The moisture levels, our humidity levels, everything, I mean, in all reality, I think it could have been a way worse year than last year. And I think it's a huge shout out to our firefighting folks that really stepped up to the plate. Our counties did a phenomenal job. State Forestry did a phenomenal job. Having some more air assets are absolutely amazing. When you look at these handouts and we're sitting there and we've got a 1 acre fire and a 67 acre fire, this, you guys, you don't have this type of stuff unless everyone's on their A game. And I believe everyone was on their A game. And in all reality, they barely got a night's sleep after last year. I mean, that's just the reality. Our local folks are just trying to get engines running and pumps running, and they got demoralized in the 24 fire season. And so I just want to, right out of the gate, just say proud of you guys on the county levels for just coming up to the plate and swinging like you did. And the fact that we're sitting with a $21 million year, basically, I mean, obviously it's bigger than that, but $21 million year and a 200,000 acre fire year on a year that we could have really lost a lot more ground. Just a great job. With that, I think I won't comment a whole lot on smoke busters at this point because I believe we'll talk about that later. But I do believe we have some ideas moving forward where we don't get too lopsided. We need to be careful we don't put too much of a mushroom on top of this thing where we can't sustain it. But at the same time, I think there's also a point where we need to do our due diligence to make sure our firefighters are taken care of, where we make sure that they are in a position that they feel, number one, that we're behind them. And number two, that this is a sustainable long-term battle that we have. Because truth be told, we'll have dry years, and we'll have years where they'll twiddle their thumbs. That's just the nature of the game. But I'll tell you what, the moment we sit there and sit back and say, no, we're safe now, it'll be another 24 fire year, and then we'll all be scratching our heads wondering how we're going to play this game again. So I think it's important that we understand that prevention is definitely worth the pound of cure. So we can talk more about smoke busters after that. Don't you guys think?
All right, I'll continue. Moving on to the State Forestry Smoke Busters, responded to 10 wildfires in 6 different counties, as well as 1 fire in Custer, South Dakota. Over the summer, the Smoke Busters had 22 fire qualified inmates, and by the end of the summer, all 4 crew supervisors for State Forestry were approved with Wyoming Department of Corrections clearance to oversee inmates after completing the 6-week training that is required. As 3 of our 4 crew supervisors have 2 years or less experience with State Forestry, we have prioritized required wildland fire training classes and opportunities to gain fire experience, which are both necessary to be certified as a crew boss to lead the crews on fire. As Representative Harrelson said, in coordination with Wyoming Department of Corrections, the Forestry Conservation Program provided a tour and project site visit in Newcastle to 4 Platte County fire chiefs and Representative Harrelson. We're gonna have Representative Harrelson, after I'm done, add more to a presentation. So before I move on off of wildfire suppression and management, I do want to make a couple comments when it comes to wildfire suppression accomplishments. Once again, Wyoming had no loss of life or major injury due to wildfire suppression activities this summer. We did see improvements, as Representative Harrelson just said, on our response and coordination between local, state, federal resources as early fire season efforts, building relationships, improving coordination, and just creating better support paid off. Wyoming did lose houses. We lost structures, cattle, private grazing lands and fences, which was challenging to those citizens who had experienced those losses. State and federal fire suppression agencies are planning to attend the Wyoming Rural Fire Association meeting in early December to review this year's lessons learned and map out shared cohesive goals for next year's fire season together. But I can't say enough about the importance of our coordination between the local, the state, and the federal wildfire resources. It is really the key to our success, especially when it comes to this efficient and effective initial attack and the response that we had. So we depend on each other. Not one agency can do it ourselves, not one fire district can do it ourselves. We have to take care of everyone, and fire is everyone's responsibility. Moving on to provide you an update on the emergency fire suppression account, I'm going to direct the committee to the handout that you were provided. I believe it is page 5, and it should look like this, EFSA. So final bills have been processed and cost shares are closed for the 2024 fire season. That's a big deal for us. We were still having fires a year ago. I think Elk was still going. We have provided you with a table that contains estimates versus actual fire costs for the 24 EFSA fires in 2024. The actual 2024 state costs from closed out of cost shares were $37 million, not the estimated $54 million. The reason for this lower than actual cost has a lot to do with aviation. We know how much aviation is on the ground, but certain states such as Montana, South Dakota, certain federal aviation, we were not charged for, but we always plan for moving forward. So certain times when we had some tankers coming down on Pleasant Valley, we didn't see those bills. Certain things, certain states absorbed costs. And so that's just to give you a heads up with that. If you go to the last page of your handout, there's a table with the 18 EFSA fires for the 2025 fire season, and approximately $21 million has been obligated to cover the 18 different EFSA fires this year. These obligations are based on estimates because final cost shares are being worked through right now by the local fire districts, the counties, the state, Forest Service, and BLM. In the 2025 legislative session, Senate File 152 provided funding to pay back the $20 million loan taken to help pay for the 2024 fire season and included an additional $20 million for the 2025 fire season. Due to the fact that the final costs for fire suppression for the 2024 wildfires were much lower than expected, the extra funding was utilized to obligate funds to fire suppression costs in 2024 beyond the original $20 million that had been provided. Hence, no need for additional borrowing. Currently, the emergency fire suppression account has $20.7 million unobligated and available for future fires. The update to the emergency fire suppression account rules has been finalized and the emergency rules have now expired. State Forestry has updated the EFSA fire application and will be providing a presentation on these changes at the upcoming Wyoming Rural Fire Association meeting. Senate File 152 also included statute direction to the state forester to establish standards and regulations for privately contracted private wildland fire resources operating in Wyoming. State Forestry has been working with insurance companies that specialize in this type of response, along with the Wyoming Fire Association's leadership, to develop rules that would create a permitting process through State Forestry. We will be moving forward with this important part of wildfire response through the general rules process. Wyoming has had some success recently in wildfire prevention and fuels mitigation programs. This year, Park County was awarded funding through the Community Wildfire Defense Grant Program to update their Community Wildfire Protection Plan. Park, Sheridan, and Sublette counties received project awards from the Western States Wildland Urban Interface Grant totaling $164,000 in federal funding. Additionally, Converse County received $260,000 in funding from the Community Assistance Funds adjacent to National Forest Grant Program. So over the last 10 years, Wyoming has treated approximately 10,000 acres and updated 11 community wildfire protection plans with a little more than $14 million in federal funding. That is averaging about 1,000 acres treated a year with grant funding. The Wyoming wildfire community is very aware of the increasing demand for treatments, planning, education in the future, and will continue to pursue additional funding to meet the ever-growing prevention and mitigation needs across the state. Lastly, I want to provide the committee with a federal wildfire policy update, specifically as federal agencies implement the presidential executive order empowering common sense wildfire prevention and response. So on September 15th, the Department of Interior and the U.S. Forest Service issued secretarial memos that provided a bit more insight into the changes that will be coming from their respective agencies. So the Department of Interior's secretarial memo directed the department to elevate wildland fire program and unify it within the U.S. Wildland Fire Service. This means the Department of Interior will be consolidating BIA, BLM, Fish and Wildlife Service, National Park Service fire management personnel into the new U.S. Wildland Fire Service. Key items found in both memos include the following: modernization of federal wildland fire aviation program, centralizing into a fire intelligence service, modernization of wildfire grants, agreements, and federal assistance processes, establishing joint procurement, including standardizing payment and auditing systems, which I'm very excited for, revising master interagency agreement for wildland fire management to ensure there's consistency and alignment in policy and program delivery between DOI and the Forest Service, and updating geographic area boundaries, which will happen in probably Wyoming. Many of these efficiencies are needed and necessary. State Forestry applauds the actions to better streamline and coordinate between the federal agencies and their management. There should be benefits from these changes to the states. It is also extremely important that while these changes move forward, that there is not a loss in effectiveness and efficiencies, including safety measures taken in wildland fire response. This includes Wyoming's interagency dispatch centers and all levels of local, state, regional, and national resource response. There's still many unknowns as to how these changes will be completed, and it's incredibly important for Wyoming to be currently engaged in these discussions and decisions. Wyoming's Master Cooperative Wildland Fire Management and Stafford Act Response Agreement is set to expire in 2026, and we are already working on finalizing an extension to secure current agreements until these changes with DOI and U.S. Forest Service are made. So with that, I will stop there and open it up for any questions.
Thank you. Questions? Yes, Representative Allen.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. This is going to sound like I'm going to criticize you, but that is the last thing I want to do. But on your handout, on July 2nd, the Bear Fire, you show on your slide that you had both a helicopter and a plane there. I was at that fire. I showed up at that fire with 1,400 gallons of water on a nurse truck. There was no plane. I don't know, there could have been a helicopter before I got there, but there was no plane. And the reason there was no plane was it was in the middle of a wind turbine farm where planes could not reach. So I'm just wanting clarification on that. And I do want to say, I was at the fire within a half hour after they called me with my nurse tank. The fire was out. Evansville was there, Bar None was there, Salt Creek was there, Mills was there. And I mean, they got on it and they did a wonderful job immediately, because that fire could have gotten carried away. And I'm not trying to criticize, I'm wanting clarification. Thank you.
Good question.
Mr. Chairman, Representative, I grabbed these two particular slides, looking through the end of the year billing statements that I get, the rundown of all of the incidents that the aviation assets had responded to. And the single engine air tankers and the Type 3 helicopter both show actual invoices, daily cost invoices for this incident. And that's why I had included it in there.
Just to follow up, Mr. Chairman.
Yeah, please.
And very well, I don't doubt that at all. And they could have got there and said, oh, we can't do this in the middle of a wind farm. So I just wanted clarification on that. But I do thank you for all the work you folks do.
Mr. Chairman?
Yeah.
Representative, if I may also add or surmise with this, that the assets could have been requested and ordered and then promptly shut down because of the ground resources had done such a fantastic job in getting it out and that there wasn't a need for those.
Turned around.
was taken care of immediately. They did not.
Representative Harrelson, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. One question that I have, because as we look at kind of I would say that as we're looking at our air assets, we're seeing kind of a shift in the way fires are being fought in the last decade, is what I would say, from what I've heard and seen. Do we have kind of a rough estimate when an asset, so let's talk about one of our Helitac helicopters goes out. So let's just say the one that we appropriated in this last year. Roughly, because obviously we don't have an exact number because every fire is different, and that, like you said, it's a moving target. But do we roughly have an idea if that helicopter goes out on X number of fires, we're calling that a break even because we know that, just like the one video you showed, I mean, that's a grassland fire that has really no impact. I mean, that was an incredibly, you didn't even have undergrowth there, you had nothing, that was literally grassland, but it was just about to heavy stand pine. And if it would have gotten into that heavy stand pine, we go from a fire that's 3 acres, 2 acres, 1 acre to we've got another potentially monstrous fire. Do we have an idea what we say if this number of fires, we call that $5 million we spent for a biennium or whatever, I don't quite remember that number, we would say we covered that cost.
Mr. Chairman, Representative, that's somewhat like an earlier question from Senator Garu of how much are we chasing an idea or a concept? We like to say that we are at least 95% successful during initial attack, and the cost point or a return on investment for this is if we can reduce those numbers of large fires that get in and establish, and now we're running into millions of dollars. I'm not sure I have a very good solid answer of if we responded to 50 fires and it was at X amount of flight hours at a cost of this, that was beneficial. It's a difficult question, sir. And I'm not sure if the level of response is the metric, if the number of fires responded, or if it's the total cost. Ideally, we would have had no flight time for this asset, and because there were no fires and it was not necessary, and we were only required to pay the contractual obligation of their daily availability to have them at our control throughout the 90-day contract.
Yeah. Follow up.
Please.
Thank you. Absolutely. Like you said, how do you put a metric on this? I think when we sit there and say a metric, we want something that's consistent every single time, year after year, we have that. But I'll also say this, and maybe I'll look back to our counties a little more. Our county firefighters, have you ever been at that point where you watch that fire move into that different fuel sources, and you're like, this is just about to get nasty? Because I've got a 20-mile-an-hour wind, and I'm sitting at 17% humidity at 95 degrees, and if it catches that ridge, all of us are gonna be in a world of hurt, because it's gonna be a long night and probably a long month. And that's what I'm more saying. Because I think that how do we put a metric on? I don't think we can, but maybe it's more of a situation where when like that grassland fire, you're like, man, if it makes it to this, we didn't know what the temperature was that day. We didn't know what our relative humidity was that day. We had none of those on that video. We didn't know that. But the boots on the ground can sit there and go, if it makes that ridge, you guys, we lost this one. And I think maybe more that's the metric I'm asking. How many times did this helicopter save us from, we just about lost that one? And I guess maybe that's more my question, asking just the direct, tell us those stories. Were there 3 fires that you're like, man, we just about lost that one and that helicopter saved us? That's more what I'm asking.
Mr. Chairman, I have a feeling it was the majority of those fires, because one of the things I think we saw this year was the ordering of aircraft. Previously, there wasn't as much ordering of aircraft because we only had 2 seats and one helicopter, and so it typically wasn't available. And I know the chief of Powder River Fire called us immediately and told us how much that meant to them and saved it. Because coming from Casey, Wyoming, up the slip road to the bull camp, It was going to take them 4 hours to get to that fire, hence why that medium helicopter was there first. And then they asked for Northern, the Johnson County Fire District out of Buffalo, to head that way, and it still was going to take them a couple hours to get there. So with that, I think that is more frequently the answer, is it saved the counties time. It's got them to that fire. They will turn around an aviation asset if they don't feel like they need it. If they get it and they got it, they'll turn it around. And that's why we just say, order it, let's order it now. It is so important in initial attack to use what resources we have.
Okay, so Mr. Co-Chair and then Mr. Vice Chair.
Thank you, Mr. Co-Chair. I'd like to take a moment just to kind of get this conversation back on track. Right now, we're talking about things that are really outside of what we're trying to get accomplished this summer. We did good work in the last session in getting additional assets for aviation. And it's important that we have that in the conversation as the department has brought that to us today. And I think the key here is, as we look at adding ground assets, making sure that we have a good mix. If we're going to add air assets, we don't want to get so far ahead of our ground assets that we're starting to waste those dollars. So if we could, Mr. Co-Chair, bring the conversation into a narrower scope, and let's just discuss what we're looking forward to on the ground assets. I think we can get through this part. We will have opportunities in December and January to hear of the success stories of both the individuals that are on this committee and their efforts to fight fires, as well as yours. And I appreciate all that, but we really need to make sure that we're spending the money correctly. That's what this committee is about, and I'd really like to get the discussion onto that track. Thank you.
Okay, any other questions? Yes, Senator Guru.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. On that subject, and I'm not looking for an answer now, but as we formulate, I look out in the crowd and I see all the men and women that actually on the ground themselves. But Chief Forester, you were talking about, and I know it's in law enforcement, and in this case it happens too. We train people, we hire them, we work, but because of the pay scales, because of the way we do things, we're just training people to go to work for someone else. And it's frustrating, and I get it. But from our side of the ball, I call it the $1 million handshake. We train them, and then we pay them, and we take on the benefits, and we take on all that, and then we own them. And we owe them a covenant, and then we are paying for 25 years or whatever. And so there's a spot in between as far as turnover versus getting. So and I'm not looking for an answer today, but I'm also looking out in the crowd and looking at all my friends out here that are in the business and know a lot about this. And reaching that sweet spot, how many, it's more than just air assets versus hotshot crews. It's about, and getting back to the good co-chair's point about honing in on cost. There is an opportunity cost for doing it the way we do it. And we know that. And so we play that game. But it constantly has to be reevaluated. It constantly, in the changing environment of what insurance costs are, what employee costs are, inflation costs, all those things have to be factored in and then refactored in. And so as we, I know you're in budget season, but that's what we're going to be looking for come, later on here when we see the budget and we see what is moving forward. So just kind of preview coming attractions.
So please give an answer, and then I want to get to public comment here.
Yep, Mr. Chairman, Senator Gru, State Forestry's had about a 40% turnover rate in the last 2 years. We've fully almost turned over, and we're going to continue to see that.
Okay. Barring any other questions, thank you so much. Appreciate it, Forester Norris. And so at this time, I'd like to have anyone come up with public testimony on what we've just heard. Anyone? Come on up. Good morning. Good to see you folks. whoever wants to go first, just introduce yourself and take it away.
Good morning, Mr. Chairman and members of the committee. My name is Shad Cooper, Suffolk County Unified Fire. I'm the County Fire Warden for Suffolk County, and I serve as the president of the Wyoming Fire Advisory Board, and I'll hand it over to the others to introduce themselves.
Mr. Chairman, J.R. Fox, Fire Warden for Campbell County and President of the Wyoming Fire Chiefs Association.
Mr. Chairman, Jason Coy, Fire Chief of Laramie County Fire Authority on the north and western side of Laramie County.
Mr. Chairman, Committee, John Rutherford, I'm the County Fire Warden for Carbon County and the District Fire Chief for the Carbon County Fire Protection District, and thank you for allowing us to be here.
Yeah, good to have you all here. Please, love to hear what your thoughts are.
I'll go first. I just wanted to thank the committee for your time and willingness to take this subject up all interim session long and do the diligence that you put into it. We're just here to reinforce the same message that we've been asking for the time. You know, we've asked for, 3 key things: to increase capacity, to address the emergency fire suppression account, and to try to reduce hazardous fuels in the state. One of the things we wanted to do is just come up with, we got some additional information today that we're going to present to you, and then ask some of our other fire responders and leaders in the state to be here and ask and answer any questions. So I'll hand it over to them.
Mr. Chairman, Committee, we absolutely concur with the approach that the Fire Chiefs Association and rural fire chiefs have worked out with our district, our state forester. These are the right directions. It wasn't that long ago that we instructed our volunteer fire staff not to call for aviation resources until they checked with us first. And that's been in the last 10 years. Now, through training, they recognize when aviation is prudent and can be effective. So our training has changed, our approach has changed, because we're not so concerned about money. This does extend absolutely into the next step. Being able to reach out to state forestry for help with overhead, for help with the emergency fire suppression accounts. It's pretty unnerving when you're in the middle of an EFSA fire and you know that there may not be any money left. So having that account replenished is huge, because the counties just aren't prepared for that. Maybe they should be, maybe it's impossible, maybe it's just something that will never happen. However, that emergency suppression account is huge, and having somebody that you can call for support to help with those fires is another big avenue. So we concur that the direction and the requests are valid, and we appreciate the support that the state has given us over the years. It's not that the support has decreased, it's that the problem has increased. Or urban interface, the values at risk, all of those complications have compounded. There's not very many fires where we can actually look at it and say, okay, this is grass, this is sage, we can deal with this, we can get it to where we can handle it. Those luxuries and those days are gone. So we truly appreciate the support that you've given us, and we've come a long ways, and we have issues ahead of us. Volunteerism is huge, but we'll deal with those on another day. Thank you for your support, and I would stand for any questions if you have them.
Mr. Chairman, understand Appropriations often looks at data, and we've talked a lot about the need for suppression modules, boots on the ground. We've talked a lot about some overhead with these regional fire managers that we've requested. I reached out to our dispatch centers across the state and pulled some data. So for 2024 and 2025, Just in the state of Wyoming, there were 509 requests for hand crews or modules. Overhead, specifically incident commander type 3s, task force leaders, division group supervisors. That same time period, the request was 408 resource orders. So the demand is there. The state forester mentioned earlier, 79% of those fires in Wyoming are on state and private land. So these are fires that are on state and private land, 79% of them. And the need is there for that overhead and for the hand crews and suppression modules. And at the risk of repeating myself from previous testimony, we essentially have 3 hand crews in the state. One with the Forest Service, the Wyoming Hotshots, one with the BLM, Devil's Canyon and Worland, and the Smoke Buster crew in Newcastle. And also briefly, just want to reach back to Senator Garu's point about state forestry and employees. You know, as the program, as we hope it continues to build, these qualifications that I mentioned for overhead, these are 15 to 20 years to get that experience and that training to obtain those qualifications. And if we continue to outsource those individuals to other agencies, it becomes difficult to build capacity in state forestry, and it becomes a training ground for other agencies. And looking at things like the pension, paid days off after a 14-day fire assignment, wages, all these things that the Forest Service and BLM offer that our current state forestry employees don't have. So thank you for your time. I'm happy to answer any questions.
Thank you, Mr. Co-Chair. Thank you for being here, Chief. Just want to make sure I heard you clearly. In 24 and 25, there were 509 requests for ground crews, and if I heard you correctly, 408 of those were filled. So we got 101 unfilled requests. Am I hearing you correctly?
Partially. 509 requests for crews or modules in the state. 408 requests for an incident commander type 3, a division group supervisor, or a task force leader. So the crews, 20 people. Overhead, Chief Cooper, ICT 3 to Campbell County. As far as what was filled, we didn't go through all those. A little bit of nuance. It can be a bit cryptic. If a crew order is filled or an overhead order, they might come at 2024. I had an overhead that was filled out of Alaska. So even though it was filled, it was a 3-day mob time to get that individual into the state. So we didn't parse out filled or unfilled. We just looked at the requests. How many requests were coming in from the state for these types of resources?
Thank you for that clarification. That makes it really clear to me. It would be helpful to have that kind of data if there were ever any that were not filled. It sounds like eventually they get filled or the fire gets out, one of the two, I suppose. But we as a committee are pretty clearly committed to trying to change the direction that the state goes in this regard. We've heard you guys really loud and clear. Some of us, I would consider myself a fiscal hawk, and yet we see this as a necessity that we begin to go in a different direction. So you have our commitment that we're doing something about it. We may not all leave these meetings completely pleased with the outcome, but we will take the state in a direction that we think addresses the risk that we see and deals with it in a way that we can accept the risk tolerance that we have with the funding requirements. So you have our commitment that we're going to work on this, and we're not going to be done at this point. When we finish and we get a bill out of this committee, we'll have a lot of work getting it across the finish line and signed into law and providing those additional assets that you've requested. But I think there's going to be opportunities as years go by to continue to collect data and see how the state of Wyoming is responding. So we appreciate all the information you guys have provided. They've been great suggestions. I think we're about ready to pick up the ball and run with it for our part. But any additional data that you can provide, when there was missed opportunities, I think that's what the Speaker Pro Tem, Representative Harrelson was getting at is, good data to help us sell it on the floor as far as here's some opportunities that we took advantage of, we saved money. Those are all helpful. So just keep the information flowing to us and we'll be champions for you. Thank you.
Mr. Chair, committee members, Jason Cloy, Laramie County Fire Authority. If you recall, during session on March 1st, 2 years ago, we had the Dusty Road Fire directly west of the city of Cheyenne. I want to put in perspective the importance of the programs that have been presented to you through state forestry and the partnerships from state forestry to the local end users. Laramie County traditionally has not been an end user because of the type of fuels that we have. But with the growth of Laramie County and the city of Cheyenne into the wildland-urban interface, we are now seeing a more direct impact of the need for our partnership with state forestry and the ESFA count and the additional staffing required to support the state. On that March 1st, we had a high-volume fire moving fast. And to answer the question of the emotional impact of seeing those helicopters come over, we had a delineation mark set that when it crossed that, we were concerned about the safety of our citizens and the loss of property, not only grasslands and the ranch revenue, but to the homes. Seeing those state assets of air support come in on March 1st that day was a breath of fresh air, not only for our firefighters that were working diligently to put that fire out and all of our regional support, but the citizens that were standing on their property going, what do I do? When they saw those bucket drops make an impact, it sent chills down our spine as the incident commanders and the leaders of those efforts. But for our citizens, they saw the value of those dollars being spent immediately, because it wasn't just forest land at that point, right? It was grassland that this never happens here. That only happens on the western part of the state, or that only happens in California or Colorado. No, ladies and gentlemen, it happens on the prairie also, in the high desert areas. So to support those functions, as you did last year, through funding of the aviation program, I want to implore you to recognize the need to increase the capacity of state forestry's ability to do those and provide those services. In addition, wildland or fire service in our state is predominantly provided by volunteers. And as you know and you have heard, volunteerism in our state and across the country continues to be a challenge for us. We've addressed those in other bills over the years, and we continue to address those. Being able to provide that full-time module staffing or seasonal module staffing in those communities, regionalized, not just in Teton County or other parts of the western state, but throughout the state, provides that initial response to keep those incidents smaller, which then in return saves tax revenue and the ESFA account, because we are able to mobilize faster and make an impact. So on behalf of an end user that responds to those incidents daily, our members appreciate and are dependent on what state forestry provides us. And these programs that are presented to you enhance those to augment very serious concerns for us local responders. So with that, I would stand for any questions.
Great. Karen, is there anyone online? How many do we have online?
Mr. Chairman, I have one person, Devin Brubaker.
Okay, why don't we bring Kevin forward?
Mr. Brubaker, if you'll turn on your camera and microphone.
Good morning, Mr. Chairman and committee members.
Morning.
My name is Devin Brubaker. I apologize. I just moved into a new office and my camera is not working on my setup, so I apologize. Just a quick moment here. My name is Devin Brubaker. I'm the airport director for the Southwest Wyoming Regional Airport and the president of the Wyoming Airports Coalition. Appreciate the opportunity to provide quick testimony on the importance of Wyoming's airports to wildfire suppression efforts across the state and region. You've heard great testimony this morning from State Forestry on the importance of their assets located at our airports across the state. Excluding any state forestry coordinated flights out of Gillette, our airport supported a total of 710 sorties on 132 fires, dropping a total of 1,009,188 gallons of retardant and 27,890 gallons of water. Mr. Chairman, these numbers do not include all of the helitech operations that originated or were supported by our airports. For instance, this summer at the Pinedale Airport, there was over a half dozen helicopters based at that airport to provide support for numerous fires in the region. Here in Rock Springs, we were home to over 6 helicopters this summer supporting aerial firefighting efforts. Mr. Chairman, this support would not be possible without the critical infrastructure that exists at our airports. Much of that infrastructure, like our runways, taxiways, and aprons, is thanks to investments from the Federal Airport and Airway Trust Fund and YDOT Aeronautics. Much of this support is made possible due to the existence of commercial air service in our communities. By having that service, it unlocks tens of millions of dollars of user fee-based funding that would otherwise go to other airports in other states. This funding not only supports the commercial service, but allows us to ensure that our runways, taxiways, and aprons are in place to support these critical firefighting efforts, as well as numerous other key services, including air ambulance, flying doctors, and agriculture. Thanks to this success, our airports stand ready to support additional resources that this committee and the legislature may provide for additional suppression efforts. With that, Mr. Chairman, happy to stand for any questions.
Great, thank you so much for your testimony. Anyone else here that would like to give testimony on this issue? Okay, please come forward. Good morning.
My name is Carrie Billing. I am a PhD candidate at the University of Wyoming, specializing in environmental.
Mr. Chairman, if she could unmute her mic, that'd be amazing.
Yes, thank you, appreciate
I'm so
that. We
sorry
want
about
everyone to
this.
hear you.
As I was saying, I am a PhD candidate at the University of Wyoming. I'm specializing in environmental economics, and I've been asked today to discuss a recent line of my research on public support for wildfire prevention. So I believe you guys have a handout that'll detail some of this information. But the work in question is co-authored with Dr. Todd Cherry at the university and is entitled Proactive Responses to Increasing Wildfire Risk, the Misalignment of Public Preferences and Management Priorities. And the motivation for this work, as all of you are clearly familiar with, is a longstanding reliance on suppression within federal wildfire management. And this reliance refers to historic acts such as the Forest Service's 10 a.m. policy, as well as recent federal decisions to direct the full force of management agencies at suppressing fires as quickly as possible. Another example of this prioritization comes from the 2024 federal wildfire budget, wherein 52% of enacted appropriations were directed to suppression, and only 9% were directed to preventative activities such as hazardous fuels management. Now, clearly, prevention and suppression are both needed to control the size and severity of future fire. But the trend of catastrophic wildfires that we've seen in recent years necessitates a paradigm shift in how we approach wildfire management. Science-based research has shown that a proactive use of prevention is one of the best ways to reduce the catastrophe of future fire and to reduce the costs of future suppression. Despite this, prevention remains both underfunded and underutilized. A reason for this underinvestment, among other things, is a perceived lack of public support. Previous research has shown that public pressure for total suppression and unease around the use of prevention tactics is often cited by wildfire managers and policymakers as a sizable barrier to the implementation of prevention projects at scale. So with all of this in mind, our research uses a national survey to examine whether this misalignment of public preferences and management priorities is really as problematic as has been posited. Specifically, we ask the public 2 questions: how much they believe the federal government is investing in wildfire prevention, and how much the public would prefer to see invested in wildfire prevention. We compare these average responses to management baselines, looking specifically at the annual % change in prevention spending, as well as the average share of the overall budget that is dedicated to prevention relative to suppression. And our results are straightforward. There's a very clear misalignment, but it is not the one that managers may have feared. In fact, our results show that the public is overwhelmingly supportive of a greater investment in wildfire prevention. While the federal government averages a 3.7% annual increase in prevention spending, our surveyed respondents would prefer an increase of just over 10% each year. Similarly, while the average share of the budget that is allocated to prevention sits around 22%, our respondents would prefer nearly 50% of the budget be allocated to prevention. Moreover, our results indicate that the public is aware that their preferences are greater than current investment, with preferred values consistently topping beliefs about federal spending. These results are particularly strong and often higher in the Intermountain West, where respondents are more likely to be informed about wildfire and have suffered its effects. Further, these results are consistent for respondents specifically from Wyoming, where events such as last year's elk fire are still deeply felt. As the committee moves forward in deciding how best to fund wildfire management within the state, these results may help shed a bit of light on the public's preferred course. Wildfire management is an inherently complicated process and has historically suffered from low public opinion. It is my only hope then that by sharing this research, the state may discover an unexpected support system within the public. Thank you.
Thank you, appreciate it. Yes, Mr. Co-Chair. And then, Representative Harrelson, then we'll go to the co-chair.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you for being here today, and well done. That was excellently put together. I couldn't agree with you more, but one of the questions that I have is, have you looked into, obviously we have multiple entities involved, private land, state lands, national forest, BLM. When you were doing your research, one of the things that we're finding, at least what we're seeing, is that it's easy to sit there and say, state forestry, take care of your property, right? It's a lot harder to get all entities involved and do that. So did you look into it all as we're looking at public persona of this? Kind of, did you guys tackle that? How do we get all these different agencies on the same page for prevention and management of forestry and our forests?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. That's not a current facet of this research, but it is something that we've run across several times within this research, the sort of the interdependence of agencies and also the various conflicts that exist when we don't have coordination within those systems. So the first step, just this research I'm presenting today, is solely on public preferences, looking, specifically at federal coordination, but very much a next step of this research is to understand the complications that arise when we don't have coordination between these different agencies and managers.
Thank you, Mr. Co-Chair. Ms. Brindley, thank you for being here. Appreciate your work. My question is probably going to be outside of your work, but maybe it's something that you're familiar with because it is tangential. But your work seems to be around public preference. What helps me, even though I am a representative and a statesman that does need to be responsive to public opinion, what I need in this committee really is economic analysis and/or theory. And you brought up a very interesting point. The public would like to see an increase of 10% rather than less than 3% on funding for prevention. What would be helpful for this committee is to understand economically, is $1 spent on prevention $1 saved in fighting fires? So, what is that relationship? And that's an economic analysis and/or even theory if the data is not available. So I don't know if you've run into that in your research, but if you have, that would be helpful to this committee to understand. As we continue to make more investments in fire suppression, we intend some of those assets to be used for prevention as well. But we too would like to know, is it better to spend money on prevention, understanding that there will be a savings on the suppression side of things? So that would be helpful. If you have any information on those, that piece of information right now, I'd really appreciate you sharing it with us.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, Mr. Co-Chair. So that is not a question that I look specifically at, but it is, sort of the fundamental economic question here. And if you look at the handout that I gave you, it is the 4th bullet point. There's a significant recent literature that's come out on the savings that prevention are able to produce. And the basic finding here, and this is a conservative estimate using a lot of empirical data from the last several years, that shows that $1 spent on prevention reduces suppression expenditures by $4 to $7. Yes, thank you.
Okay, any other questions? Well, thank you so much. Appreciate all the testimony, and I appreciate the State Forester, and members of the committee, just FYI, for your knowledge, I'm not going to be taking a break at 10, so if you need to step out for a minute, I'm trying to not only keep us on track, but it is a Friday and semi-holiday, so I'm trying to get you home in a decent hour. Yes.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. In the spirit of Friday, I will be brief.
Okay.
My name is Travis McNiven. I'm here on behalf of with Pano AI.
Okay.
Pano AI, Forster Norris, during the meeting in Du Bois, that you all had mentioned the pilot project that she and the forestry office and Pano had started. And so with me today, I have Michaela Baker, from Pano, as well as Chief Evers. And so if I may, I'll just simply go right ahead.
Yeah,
and turn
please
from
do.
them.
Welcome.
Thank you. Mr. Chairman, members of the committee, thank you for allowing me the time to speak with you today. As Travis mentioned, my name is Michaela Baker, and I come from Arizona, so I'm a second-generation cattle rancher out of Arizona, also a previous wildland firefighter for the U.S. Forest Service, and now I work as a government affairs manager for Pano AI. And obviously, as we've heard across the U.S., right, things are getting hotter, seasons are getting drier, and that expanding wildland-urban interface is starting to increase wildfire risk and threatening the landscapes, communities, and even sometimes our firefighters. So early detection and rapid response are essential in this area, and that's where we believe Pano can come in and help. So Pano AI, we provide an advanced AI wildfire detection program that creates a situational awareness platform for responders and fire managers. And so our high definition cameras rotate 360 degrees every 60 seconds, and then we overlay the AI onto that imagery looking for smoke in those early fires starting. And then once that smoke is detected, it'll go to our 24/7 operations center to be validated by a person. And then once that's validated, it'll be sent on to the fire managers and responders. And Pano isn't just really a detection tool, so we're a decision support system for these fire managers that enhances the readiness, safety, and communications across different agencies, especially here in the Western United States, including Colorado, Arizona, Idaho, and we are actually here in Wyoming, so. Through the leadership, as Travis mentioned, Kelly Norris and Jared DeLay, they brought us in and launched a 2-year pilot program this year in the Casper Mountain region. And we have about 4 stations up there that are providing critical coverage for them. And these systems have already detected multiple fires, 2 of which you should have handouts for. And across other states, we've seen early detection from Pano that has been able to enable a 50% faster initial response and an informed and targeted initial attack, which I'll give to Chief Evers in just a minute to speak about. But this can save anywhere from tens of minutes to several hours in the early stages of fire, especially in the rural areas, right, where no one's looking out there to see where that fire started. And it could be the difference between a 1 acre fire, a 1,000 acre fire, and also make it a possible savings for the state and others in about millions of dollars in suppression and property losses. So as I said, thank you. I didn't want to take up too much time, but I'd like to hand it over to Chief Evers of the Casper Mountain Fire Department.
Good. Thank you, Mr. Chairman and committee, for allowing us to be here today. I am the lucky recipient of the first test program in Wyoming with the Pano cameras. And, you know, you saw AI and I was like, don't know about this. I will admit that. But it has been phenomenal. I did not yet have access to it on the Muddy Fire, which is one of the first handouts that you received. And you'll see the first flicker on there that came in first off of Pano, the camera itself. Our department didn't get paged that there was a fire until 9 minutes later. In that 9 minutes, it was reported to the wrong area, to our dispatchers in Casper. So we're going way the wrong area. Actually, we were going down east end of Casper Mountain, and this was on Muddy Mountain. But with the detection and everything being triangulated and state forestry being able to say, hey, this is where this fire is, the Latin Long took us right to it, besides the big glow in the dark. But from when it had been detected by Pano to when it had been called into us, I would say it had eaten 23 acres in that 9 minutes. It was burning uphill, very fast, very hot, very dry. So we were very lucky on that. And we were also very lucky, besides the air support that's been discussed today, we also had the smoke busters there. And so I see utilizing both those programs greatly. Then if you look at your second, which was a vehicle fire on October 3rd, I got the alert to this. One of our state foresters in Casper got the alert to this, and BLM got the alert. Our emergency manager happened to be going on his way home, and he lives in the area. And so he's driving to where it was reported by the reporting party observed the smoke. And that probably would have put him a good 2/3 of a mile from where the actual fire was, but due to Pano, we could tell him, yep, you need to go here and know what resources we need to order. Because it was one of those typical Wyoming days of it was low relative humidity, fairly high winds, and we'd been under a fire weather watch all day, so we were all pretty jumpy anyway. The vehicle fire came in, then it was paged as a wildland fire, but because of how fast and accuracy of where the Pano cameras told us to go, we were able to keep it under an acre and get the wildland fire put out, and we could actually keep a lot of the resources that were originally en route in service, saving them money. And then that was a rough day in Natrona County anyway, because it kind of blew up on, we were all super busy, so it was nice that we didn't have resources somewhere else when they were getting called to someone else, and it was because of Pano that we could keep everybody in their areas. One item that is not on here that I think is important is, besides being able to have eyes on the fire and have accurate eyes after the triangulation, we know the situational awareness that our firefighters are going to be in. It will detect spot fires, if we're watching the main one and it picks something up somewhere else. However, on September 15th, we had some pretty nasty lightning move through Natrona County into Converse County. At about 4:00 in the afternoon, the Pano cameras alerted and the eyes triangulated to Converse County. I called our local dispatch center and I said, you need to get Converse County en route. It looks like it is close to the Dave Johnson power plant, which we know is a major infrastructure in the state of Wyoming. And I said, they are going to not think that they see anything, but the Pano cameras picked up this jet black smoke, and boy, it was moving to the west quicker than quick. And then the wall, a black storm wall, moved into the north, and you could no longer differentiate smoke from cloud. But because this had detected, and our forestry in Casper called BLM, I called our local dispatch to get Converse County, they kept that fire quite small, and it was only roughly 3 miles northeast of the power plant. So I think it's important in early detection more rapid response, keeping the fires much smaller, as well as protecting infrastructure, because in Wyoming, we've got some infrastructure in some interesting places. Our highway signs say, "Welcome to big, wonderful Wyoming." I think it looks more wonderful without big splotches on it. I think it would also, help our tourism, help our ranchers, our grasslands and everything. So that's all I have. I'll stand for questions.
Chief, thank you so much. Really appreciate that. Any questions? Representative Harrelson.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Connectivity and power up. How does this system work as far as what do we need for infrastructure to put these cameras in locations?
Yeah, absolutely. Mr. Chairman, Representative, it's dependent on where the cameras are going to go, right? I understand that Wyoming is very rural. You guys have a lot of wildland, which I love, but connectivity can be an issue. So what we do at PANO is we take a look before we even want to go out and install cameras at what the area and the location is that you have as a concern. So one, we'll send a team out there, we'll put up a drone and we'll do footage review to make sure that where the tower is that we're looking at, we'll give you a good view shed, what connectivity is there, and then determine from there what we need. And if you don't have a power connection, which usually you do to towers, we'll come off of that. If there's not, then we'll bring out a solar panel and extra battery systems to be able to run those camera systems. And then if there's no cellular service to be able to tap into anywhere close, we'll also tie into Starlink. So.
Anyone else? Anyone else? So appreciate all three of you coming. Thank you so much. Appreciate it. Thank you. Thank you. Okay, with that, I'm going to ask Mr. Kevin to come up. Wildfire relief programs. No, you go for it.
Mr. Chairman, I was just going to testify really quick on the previous bill.
Pardon me?
Is public comment still open on the previous bill?
Absolutely.
Okay, if I could
Is there
really
anyone,
quick, sorry.
is there anyone else who would like to give public comment? Anyone else? Do we have anyone online, Karen? Okay, please go ahead.
Perfect. Thank you, Senator Salazar. Appreciate that. My name is Holly Kennedy. I'm with the Wyoming Association of Conservation Districts. Appreciate the opportunity to sit here in support of the wildfire fighting program here in Wyoming and all of the important things that it does for us here in the state. I will keep my comments pretty brief. I think it's easy to see how well supported this is here. And I would just ask for continued support for recovery and especially for that prevention piece. Conservation districts have a great role in wildfire, both prevention and recovery here in the state. Conservation districts are really great at leveraging funds. We're really great at taking dollars, matching dollars, pairing dollars together, and really getting these projects on the ground and helping out landowners. And of course, to do that, we need funds, and there needs to be funds to draw from. So we appreciate all of the support that you all have provided for wildfire recovery efforts in the state, but would just ask that there continues to be that level of support. And in particular, support in the areas of infrastructure, revegetation, erosion control, and then invasive species management post-recovery are really important for the work we do and for those landowners out there on the ground. And so, conservation districts, the number one, limiting factor that we run up against is that funding mechanism and that funding piece. And especially right now, as we're working through how the changes to property taxes in the last couple of years have really kind of affected our districts, and we're trying to work through that and figure that out. It becomes even more important when we're looking at leveraging dollars and working with other organizations such as the FSA, the NRCS, and the Wyoming Wildlife Natural Resource Trust. It's really important to have those match dollars available. So just, I'll keep it very brief again. Just wanted to speak in support of funding support for wildfire recovery here in the state. And with that, I would sit for any questions.
And I apologize that I didn't see you, so thank you for coming up.
No worries.
Any questions? Any questions? You have anything else you'd like to add?
Not at this time.
I don't want
Thank
to
you,
rush
Chairman.
So, okay, good.
Appreciate it.
Is there any other public comment before we move to the next item? I don't want to shortchange anyone. Okay, and nothing, no one online?
No, sir.
Okay, it's Halloween Friday, come on. Okay, I'll bring you back and.
Mr. Chairman,
Mr.
I just want to point out one thing to you. Following the State Budget Department, we had anticipated hearing from Farm Service Agency.
Yeah,
But they will not be able to attend.
okay,
In lieu of being able to provide oral testimony, I did provide to the members on your desk a couple of handouts from them, which they were able to provide. I just wanted to make sure that you had that knowledge.
thank you, thank you. Mr. Hibbert, how are you?
Good morning, Mr. Chairman, and happy Halloween, everyone. Today, I would just like to introduce the GMO, what a technical service request is, and how this ties together for the Joint Appropriations Committee. And then I'll turn it over to Christine Emminger. She is the administrator of the State Budget Department's Grants Management Office. And I'm Kevin Hibbert. I'm the director of the State Budget Department, which houses the Grants Management Office, or from now on, I'll just refer to it as GMO. So the GMO came to life after the efficiency study years ago in 2017. If you remember, Alvarez and Marcel, at the behest of the legislature, did an efficiency study. And several things we've implemented, strategic sourcing, et cetera, and one of the key things we implemented was the Grants Management Office. 2 years ago, I sat in front of this committee and I explained to you what the need was. Governor Gordon has been on record saying that Wyoming was lagging in its ability to capture federal funds, et cetera. So the Grants Management Office has a couple of consultants, and we help local governments. This is a local government lift. We want to help the local governments become successful in not only applying for grants and being successful in that, but managing it. The application is 20%, the management is 80%. And that goes all the way from cradle to grave, all the way to the CFA reporting, the subrecipient reporting, all the things that, all those little nasty words that you hear, we help make sure that we get this done right. We've had more than 587 of these technical service requests that you're going to see today. We have one that I shared with Mr. Richards on coal for the Craig as well. So in these technical service requests, what you're going to see here shortly is what the GMO really truly does. 587 technical service requests, all counties, every single county has benefited from the GMO. And by the way, just the last comment that I'll make on this before I hand it over to Administrator Emminger is, yesterday, we announced that we were going to be in Casper for a conference at the Thyra Thompson building. And we're bringing our staff because we travel 2 people. And within minutes, all the seats were applied for. So just kind of give you the example of how interested all the communities across Wyoming are in the Grants Management Office. So with that, I'll turn this over to Christine Emminger, and she'll talk about the wildfire relief programs, technical service request.
Thank you, Director. Good morning, Joint Appropriation Committee and Mr. Chairman and Co-Chairman. I am happy to present today some of the wildfire relief program work that the Grants Management Office has done. We heard from some incredible individuals today, and also from members of the JAC themselves, about responding to wildfires. And really, I'm here to speak about the other side of the equation, which is what happens after a wildfire, or what happens when one of our landowners or ranchers or farmers or even private citizens are in that state of disarray after they have lost everything. There is a gray area when it comes to who has money, who do you call to try to get that money, and is it even an appropriate or eligible use for what you are trying to remediate? One of the things that we decided to do to kind of fill that gap in knowledge is create what we called the Wildfire Recovery Guide. It is specifically a document that is refined and it identifies a summary of federal fund programs that encompass not only livestock, not only hay, not only small businesses, but a majority of what we have seen in the past be impacted by wildfires. I've provided that recovery guide to Karen Vaughn, LSO staff. I believe that she has handed it out. We update and we maintenance this guide every time a new, excuse me, Mr. Co-Chairman, it's the smaller of the two. We update this as new federal funds are released in response to wildfires, even ones that are on the border that may only cover one single county, Lincoln County, but it impacts other states like Utah, Montana, South Dakota. We still see impacts. You have heard that from our state forester as well. It's a pretty loaded question about who to go to, so we have listed contact information for those eligible entities that private landowners can go and ask. We also have the option to submit a technical service request through our office. If you don't know where to go or who to contact and you review this document and you're like, yeah, I didn't answer any of my questions, we can help you get the answer to your question, and we will actually pull in the resources from the entire executive branch of the state of Wyoming, including OSLI and the Wyoming Office of Homeland Security and Wildlife Natural Resource Trust. Outside of that document, we have also prepared what is called a Wildfire Recovery, Response, and Preparedness Funding Opportunity Scan. When we started the Grants Management Office, we knew very quickly that there are a lot of alternative funding sources, but the people in the state of Wyoming, including local governments and citizens, really only identify maybe 3 or 4 different funding opportunities. With a funding opportunity scan, we actually expand the landscape to include state, federal, and sometimes private foundation dollars that can be applied for. This is the larger document, Chairman and Mr. Co-Chairman. When we develop something called an opportunity scan, we give you a little preface. Hey, this is the problem that we were presented with. This is how we went about it. This is our methodology. And this is a small analysis of what we have found in our research. After that little preface and summary of the beginning of the document, on page 6 starts all of the other opportunities that are out there and that are available. Between these two documents, tons of information. Tons of funding opportunity sources, tons of alternative methods to go about being prepared, planning, mitigating, responding to wildfire. It still doesn't answer everyone's questions. There's still a lack of knowledge or getting people up to speed because there is a state of disarray or confusion sometimes when you are in an emergency response. I used to actually work for another state emergency management agency. Things get thrown around. You hear that resources are available, but you can't find them. You're having trouble navigating them. That's why we actually decided to put on a webinar in December of 2024 and invite our state and federal partners to the table to help speak about where to find those opportunities, what they are for, and how we can help apply or get those resources to them. We had another webinar in October of 2025. It was held on October 8th of this month. Our federal partners were not able to be present. However, we presented all of the information that we had collected and researched and had in this opportunity scan. I will say with the passing of the One Big Beautiful Bill that was executed on July 4th of this year, we have more opportunities now and they are presented in this document. Everything, it's a lot of information to digest. We know that people don't have all of the answers, which is why we don't want, but if we need to be a single focal point and be used as a resource, we can, and we will tap into other areas of the state. We have a website that is dedicated to this as well, and it houses not only these two materials that I provided today, but a wealth of information from when we first started this task or this exercise. It is available at the State Budget Department website. We have a header, Wildfire Recovery Resources. You can go right to it. There are important items to note about what is listed in these two documents. There are eligible entities for relief programs and Grants Management Office assistance. It's free to people. The state of Wyoming holds the contract. They don't pay a cost. We can help them apply for the funds and get them the money that they need. The other item of importance is that there are eligibility criteria, and that hinges upon a presidential disaster declaration, which is different than a secretarial disaster declaration often provided by the SBA or the USDA. That differentiates what you can and cannot apply for when it comes to federal dollars, and sometimes even some of our state dollars. We have to have an FMAG in place sometimes. You heard Kelly Norris talk repeatedly about these certain situations throughout the interim topic at JAC. There are loan opportunities, and when we have presented the loan opportunities to certain individuals who have come to us for a technical assistance request, they are not particularly favored. However, they are available and they are out there, so we did include them. The value that we can provide is what I spoke to earlier, is that we hold the contract. It's free for these individuals. All they have to do is ask us for the assistance, and we are more than willing to provide it. We can provide one-on-one assistance. We can do another webinar if the federal government opens back up. We'll post it online. We publish the information. We've identified our stakeholders, and we've collaborated with them well. And to speak to someone's earlier comment, this is what promotes efficiency. We have tapped into Kelly Norris's team, the State Forestry, OSLI, WOS, Wildlife Natural Resource Trust, our Game and Fish, our Department of Agriculture. This is the coalition of people who are behind these documents that we have produced, because we've asked them to provide their feedback and their recommendation on how best and the most appropriate way to display this. With that, I would like to hand it back to Mr. Chairman and Mr. Co-Chairman and open it up for any public comment or any questions.
So you can imagine the amount of information that is being brought to us, particularly now. Can I ask you to reach out to me in a week? I want to learn more about this.
Yes.
And I think it's important. I just need to learn more. And I am in a time crunch right now, trying to get everything through the agenda, but will you make that commitment to reach out to me so I can learn more about this?
Yes, I will. I will hold through on my promise, Mr. Chairman.
Okay, thank you. Yes, Mr. Co-Chair.
Thank you, Mr. Co-Chair. I too will ask for some information in the future. We have been working somewhat in a vacuum here as far as what we're trying to do for the state in fire prevention and fire fighting. So I can imagine that there are federal programs that may require that the state's done its due diligence, if you will. And so, I'd like you to kind of look at what we've been doing as far as adding air assets. We're potentially going to be bringing a bill to add ground assets. Are we doing the best thing for our citizens as far as ensuring that the federal opportunities are completely opened up to them based on what the state has done in its area of due diligence? So that's just a request of mine, and if you can get back to us later, just making sure that we're not missing something as we look at increasing these assets. Thank you.
Mr. Chairman?
Yes.
If you would like, I can wrap this up. The GMO is right in that wheelhouse. That's why we exist. And by the way, our return on investment that you gave us is 18 to 1. 18 to 1 already. Documented return on investment. That's huge. The other thing about it is that every action, every memo, every document that comes out of Congress, we have in our hands, and we are looking how that would be able to be leveraged for the citizens of Wyoming. And the last thing I will say to this is, we're leading the nation now. We're out in front of everybody. We've got states calling us on the phone and taking our model and implementing it with their legislatures. I want to stay out there, Mr. Chairman.
Absolutely. Great. Any other questions? Yes, Representative Angelos.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and thank you for this document. My community was hit really hard with the wildfires last year, and I called Forester Norris and what help is there? Because you're exactly right. You're an emergency. People are asking and they have no clue. So my question is, when we're all in that emergency and we don't know what to do because we can't remember that this came through, are you guys going to those communities or partnering with State Forestry when there's those fires to get right into those communities? That's my question.
Yes, Mr. Chairman, we actually have an example of that, Representative Angelos. Someone from, I believe, Hot Springs County contacted us on ways to be able to be better prepared. We partnered with our Wyoming Office of Homeland Security and gave them that technical assistance request because that is in their wheelhouse, and they got them the information that they needed.
Senator French?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Great information, but you know, when you're affected, you're like, oh God, who do I contact? Is all this information directly at each county commission or each conservation district? Or, so, you know, it's, God, where do I turn? Oh, do I have to go to the state? Usually your local person is the easiest one to ask, you know, everybody knows their county commissioners and that kind of thing. Then they can say, yeah, we've got the information. Here it is. This is where you go for these things.
Mr. Chairman, absolutely 100%. We have reached out to WHAM. We have reached out to Wyoming County Commissioners. We've been there in the backyards of everybody that asked us to come in. We have a funding summit with thousands of participations. We have a list of contact information that we do email blasts constantly. But one of our most highest priorities is absolutely making certain that everybody understands that this tool and this help's available, not just to get the grant, but the more painful aspect of managing those grants for those local governments.
Mr. Chairman, quick follow-up. We will also make an additional request to WHAM and WCCA to make sure that they have the most up-to-date documents.
Great. Any other questions? Any other questions? Appreciate it. Appreciate it so much. We'll take some public comment for anyone who'd like to come up on this issue. Anyone? Anyone? Anyone online? Okay. Great, well, thank you. Next up is wildfire insurance. What do we have coming up? Please. Welcome, sir.
Okay.
Morning.
Good morning, Chairman Salazar, Co-Chairman Bear, and members of the committee. My name is Ethan Amon. I serve as a Senior Director with the American Property Casualty Insurance Association, or APCIA, and I'm based in Colorado. Joining me virtually is my colleague Karen Collins, Vice President, Property and Environmental. Together we work—
Good morning.
Good morning. Together, we work on policy solutions for property insurance issues nationwide with a focus on risk mitigation and resilience to natural catastrophes. So thank you for having us here today, having me here today at your beautiful capital, and to discuss an insurer's perspective on wildfire risk. So we do have a PowerPoint presentation that we'll be going through here. We can go to the second slide. Great, so APCIA is the primary national trade association representing roughly 2/3 of the home, auto, and business insurance market. And we have a presence in every community across the nation, including here in Laramie County and across Wyoming. Our primary mission is protecting people and communities and helping them recover from catastrophic losses. If we can go to the next slide, please. So today I'm going to cover three main topics, and in interest of time, I'll try and move through these fairly quickly. But I wanted to start by just providing a little bit of background on the current state of the U.S. property insurance market that's impacting insurance affordability and availability. And then I'll share some insights on growing wildfire losses, and then finally discuss solutions. So if we can get to the next slide, please. So the insurance industry is receiving a lot of attention recently as housing affordability is at its lowest level since the 1980s. Really, the American dream of home ownership has rapidly deteriorated as we've seen house prices increase exponentially. And as recently as 2013, the median family would have been able to have twice as much income that was needed to afford the median home, and now we're seeing that a typical family wouldn't qualify for that median priced home. Next slide, please. So homeowners insurance is typically only a small cost of overall home ownership, a little more than home maintenance, but much less than property taxes and mortgage. But it's the combination of all these costs that are impacting housing affordability so much nationwide. In Wyoming, much like a lot of the rest of the country, has seen insurance rates increase significantly in recent years. Next slide, please. And to put it simply, insurance rates have increased across the US due to rising losses. The graph on the left shows the net underwriting of the property casualty insurance industry over the last 10 years, basically how much the industry takes in versus how much it pays out in claims, expenses, and dividends. And you can see it improved slightly last year, but overall, over the last 10 years, it's still running a $49 billion deficit. In the right graph, the top 3 lines are the life, commercial, and health insurance sectors, all profitable. But the blue line going deeply into the loss category there is the personal lines, home and auto insurance. It's, as I mentioned briefly, rebounded in the last year, largely due to favorable auto results. And I'll mention Wyoming has been a little less challenged than some other states due to more favorable regulation here in the state. And the market is also fairly competitive, with over 80 insurers that write homeowners insurance and 24 that write farm owners insurance in the state. But according to the most recent data from the National Association of Insurance Commissioners, Wyoming homeowners insurers have had a small underwriting loss over the last 10 years, while farm owners was just very slightly profitable. Go to the next slide. I think I'm actually just going to skip over this slide in the interest of time. It basically is projecting into 2025 a potential loss for homeowners insurers, but that's based on just the first half of the year, and the results are to be determined, I guess, depending on how the rest of the year shakes out. So I just want to take a couple minutes here on this slide to walk through the differences between the key types of insurance that are relevant to Wyoming residents: homeowners insurance, farm owners insurance, and then the federal crop insurance program. And then also discuss briefly how each of these addresses wildfire risk. So homeowners is designed for individual homeowners, and it's typically more in your urban and suburban settings, of course, and it covers direct physical loss to a property during the policy period. And I'll caveat too that all of these generalizations that I'm going to talk about are, of course, subject to the individual policy terms, deductibles, and any exclusions that may apply. But homeowners typically covers the main dwelling, garages, personal belongings, and liability. And wildfire damage to the home and contents is typically insured, whereas things like an earthquake or flood are typically not. Policies are also typically going to include coverage for debris removal and temporary housing, but these vary by the insurer and the policy. Farm owners insurance is more tailored to rural areas and agricultural operations, and it often combines elements of personal and commercial coverage. So it can cover the farmhouse, outbuildings, equipment, and some wildfire losses are typically covered, but there are important kind of caveats that apply in some instances. So livestock may require a separate endorsement, and unharvested crops and certain structures that may exist on the property may not be covered unless they're specifically added. So this type of insurance is much more customized, and coverage can vary widely depending upon the insurer and the specific needs of the operation. And then I'll just briefly touch on federal crop insurance. This is available to farmers that grow eligible crops, and the subsidies in that program are subsidized by the federal government. It's administered by the U.S. Department of Agriculture, and it'll cover crop yield and revenue losses, including those caused by wildfire, but only for insurable crops. It does not cover buildings, equipment, and livestock. So this program is, I think, really a key element for farmers that are growing these eligible crops, but it's not a substitute for broader property protection. And then just three key takeaways that I wanted to highlight on this slide is that homeowners insurance is more standardized wildfire protection, but it's less applicable to agricultural operations and more rural settings. Farm owners insurance is more suitable for those types of operations, but it's much more customizable and requires careful review to ensure that wildfire risks are adequately covered. And then the federal crop insurance is an important part of protecting crop income, but leaves those gaps in coverage for other wildfire-related losses. So if we go to the next slide, I'm going to go back now to talking about some of the factors that are impacting insurance markets nationwide.
Mr. Chairman.
Yes, Representative Haroldson.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Ethan, thank you so much for being here today. And I'm not trying to interrupt, but I'm going to interrupt. So I think really when we were talking about insurance today, what we were hoping for is we're wanting to try figure out some ways so let me give you a little background of where I live and what I represent. I represent farmers and ranchers that predominantly live in a position in place where wildfires are at the back door literally all the time. And so I think we all are fully aware that insurance, I'm fully aware because I paid my insurance just last month, right? That insurance is completely on a change. We're not going to be making any decisions on insurance here today, and I thank you for your presentation and what you're bringing. But this is a question that I have, and I think a question this group has and this appropriations has, is this. Let's ask this question. Let's say I'm a rancher, and I'm living on a 2,000 acre ranch with another 1,500 deeded. And I am sitting there going, how can I, where I have a major risk of wildfire, how can I help myself, first of all, be able to be insured and possibly have lower insurance rates? And the question we have is, if I were to get a red card and have a tender on property, would I be able to see a lower insurance rate and or have the ability to be insured in that situation?
Yeah, Mr. Chairman, and thank you, Representative Haroldson, for the question. Yeah, I apologize for maybe going a little bit too much into the background, but.
Don't.
Okay. Yeah, so I may turn to my colleague Karen Collins for her input here as well, but we're seeing some new innovative programs in the wildfire space that are meant to help property owners conduct mitigation on their properties to help drive down wildfire risk. And it's still a little early in the process, but insurers are processing, the data to understand, okay, if I take this action, what type of a reduction in risk does that translate into? And then how can we translate that into be reflected in rates that property owners will pay? And so what we're seeing is that there are situations where comprehensive mitigation can really have a dramatic reduction in risk. And so there are possibilities that taking those types of steps will have a favorable impact on insurability and could impact rates. But again, it's up to kind of the individual insurer to make those types of determinations based on the actuarial science. So I'd say, I mean, specific instances that a property owner may have would best be addressed with the individual insurer to help them kind of understand what the impact may be. So I'm not sure if that fully answered your question, but I'd turn to Karen if she had any additional input to provide.
Yeah, follow up?
Sure, yeah.
Oh.
Yes, Ms. Collins, go ahead.
I was just going to say thank you for the question, because it is a question that we are hearing from a lot of different property owners in many, many different states. What is it going to take to get coverage and reduce the cost of that coverage? The biggest challenge that our industry is facing, we were going to kind of walk through maybe some of the losses and what the trends are that's driving that. But the short answer is companies are coming out of a really challenging market cycle where they have seen losses surge much higher than the prices. And so we're seeing temporary market friction right now across the US. You have seen some companies have to temporarily pull back as they manage through the challenges of trying to increase rates to kind of catch up to what those costs have been. As we're seeing in a lot of states, and including in Wyoming, these costs are rising to match that current economic reality. You're starting to see some of those capacity, those availability issues starting to ease. So we're kind of coming through this market cycle. the risk reduction that you describe with a tender and other measures to reduce that wildfire risk, companies are absolutely looking at that closely. Some of that's going to vary by company individually. Our farm and ranch policies is a really, it's a niche market for the insurance industry. And so for those that are providing that coverage, they may work closely with you through the underwriting process to understand what measures you're taking individually. And as it relates to pricing, this could also vary potentially by companies. What Ethan was alluding to is really some new standards that we're really seeing the science telling us how we can reduce risk at the property level. But at an agricultural level, with all of the acres of ranch and farmland that you have, there are certainly other measures, things like prescribed fire treatments, things like having these water tenders and other resources available to be able to respond to that. So we'll touch on more of that through the presentation, but that is certainly an issue that we're aware of, that we're trying to work through. But some of it is also the market cycle that we're in, and we're kind of working to come through that.
Mr.
Follow-up?
Chairman.
Do you have a follow-up?
I do.
Please.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. Thank you guys both for that answer. And I understand every underwriter is in a different position. But one of our goals and one of our hearts here is not just talking about insurance side, but also talking about in the firefighting side of it, is what we heard from the young lady from the University of Wyoming and everything, is mitigation is where we're gonna win the game with wildfires and where we're gonna win the game with insurance. I mean, if we look at what happened in California, that was, I mean, hindsight's 20/20, but we can look at a lot of poor decisions that brought us to a place where now insurers are scratching their heads wondering, in this inflated building market and everything, how do they replace literally billions of dollars worth of assets that were lost in a single week. And so we're on our side going, hey, how do you learn from someone else's mistake, and how do we make sure that isn't our future? And so I think to anyone listening, as well as to you guys as well, that's our heart, is give us the tools that we can put in the hands of our people, just as we just heard on GMO. That's all on the backside. Once the failures happen, once we're in a bad situation, what can we do on the front side? So maybe we don't get there. Maybe these legacy ranches and farms aren't looking at losing all their assets through a wildfire situation. So I think that's our real heart here, is how do we start moving this culture, shifting this culture, and how can you guys help us make that reality? And so I think that's really the question that we're bringing to you guys, is help us make a win here. Maybe we start shifting the entire way that insurance views wildfire, instead of it being a deal of, man, when this rolls through, we're millions into the hole, instead going, hey, what do we do to make sure when this rolls through, the grass gets a haircut and we don't lose structures and we don't lose large assets. So that's, I think, the heart we have here, and what we'd love to have you guys partner with us on.
Yeah, and just to piggyback on that, I think Representative Harrelson has hit the needle on the head. This is the focus that we're really looking at. And so Ethan, either you or Ms. Collins, if you want to expound on that framework and area, please do.
Sure. Yeah, Mr. Chairman, what I might suggest is maybe I just skip forward a few slides, because we do get to kind of more of those topics a little bit later in the presentation, if that's all right.
Please, yes.
Okay.
Why don't we just hit that right now?
If we could skip ahead to maybe slide 13, and I'll breeze through some of these first slides and get into the meat of what we're here to discuss then today. So this slide is basically just showing really the factors that are driving increasing wildfires. We're seeing higher severity more often. And if we go to slide 14, the next one, please. So we're seeing growth explode in wildfire-prone regions, as was discussed earlier. More people moving into the wildland-urban interface, and in fact, Redfin estimates that some 93% of homes currently built today in Wyoming face elevated wildfire risk. Next slide. I won't belabor this point. We're seeing wildfire losses increase dramatically, 5 times what previous decades have experienced in the last decade. Next slide, please. This just highlights we're seeing wildfires in California largely, but across the western US increasingly. And I'll just highlight one, the 2024 Smokehouse Creek fire that was in Texas. burned over 1 million acres, resulting in the loss of some estimated 15,000 to 18,000 cattle. And unfortunately, many property owners discovered after that event that they were underinsured or unaware of coverage gaps that existed for things like fencing or their livestock. Next slide, please. We've seen in recent studies that these fast fires are responsible for increasing share of the losses that we're seeing today, originating in the natural environment, and then with warm, dry, and windy conditions, it spreads them quickly into the built environment, often overwhelming those fire suppression resources. So next slide, please. Your forestry and wildfire experts earlier have touched on the specific wildfire situation in Wyoming, but I'm just going to highlight this helpful risk viewer. It's a website, wildfirerisk.org, that includes a lot of great interactive maps and resources to help communities understand, explore, and reduce their wildfire risk. So I would just point that out. And as an industry, we strongly support the development of these types of resources to help inform public policy, help inform building codes, and help educate the community about wildfire risk. Next slide, please. Yeah, so I'll breeze through this very quickly too. Characterizing wildfire for insurers is very complex given all the interacting factors that affect wildfire behavior. But insurers are using very complex and sophisticated tools and models to help them understand wildfire and what the potential risks and impacts could be. I'll mention that one particular challenge with wildfire is that a home that ignites in a wildfire is over 90%, has a 90% chance of being a total loss. So the structure, the contents, and that's very different from some of the other perils that insurers are facing and our communities are facing. Next slide, please. So now we're getting into more of the mitigation and the upfront actions that can be taken to address some of these issues. So we know that homes with resilience measures are more likely to withstand natural disasters. And a key goal of our organization and the insurance industry is helping to align stakeholders behind real science-based strategies to help communities reduce their losses. A top policy priority of ours is to encourage stronger building codes and improved land use planning in some of these high-risk areas. And we're advocating for really data-driven approaches to help communicate that risk and support community action that can reduce risk in the near term. As we've heard earlier today, infrastructure and emergency response improvements are also needed. And we're actively engaging with lawmakers and policymakers to help support stronger mitigation programs. Next slide, please. This is one of the newer programs that Karen alluded to. The insurance companies, insurance industry funds and supports an organization called the Insurance Institute for Business and Home Safety, or IBHS, and they conduct scientific research to help reduce the impact of natural disasters on buildings. And in the wildfire space, IBHS developed their Wildfire Prepared program. In this graphic, the items in kind of the orange and red are critical actions that are needed to reduce risk from embers, while the blue items are additional layers of protection that can protect against direct flame exposure. So one of the most important measures that we've seen is creating a 5-foot non-combustible zone around the home or structure. So this includes clearing vegetation in that area or anything that can catch fire. And taking this action in particular has a very dramatic ability to increase a structure's chance of surviving a wildfire. There are also recommendations about roof and siding and other features of the property that should be considered to reduce risk. And I'll mention too that we've seen regular maintenance is essential, and mitigation isn't just a one-time effort, but it really requires ongoing upkeep. Next slide, please. So unique to wildfire, community-level mitigation is also needed, since one structure that ignites then poses a risk to adjacent structures. So IBHS developed a neighborhood version of their wildfire prepared program, and this requires the homes in the perimeter of a neighborhood to have a higher level of defense than homes inside the community. Next slide, please. We wanted to show here on this slide just one example of the benefits of mitigation. So the house that you see pictured is called the Red Roof House, and it survived the 2023 Lahaina fire in Hawaii. And the home underwent restoration in 2022. They replaced an old asphalt roof with a commercial-grade corrugated metal roof, and it also had air pockets for heat dissipation. And then at the ground level, they cleared vegetation around the perimeter of the home and added a stone buffer. And this actually wasn't actions that they were taking for fire protection, but to prevent termites. And so while those strategies weren't intended for wildfire mitigation, they ultimately were consistent with the work of IBHS that I just highlighted in creating that ignition-resistant zone around the house. So the result was that there was very little damage that this house sustained, while other homes in the neighborhood, as you can see, were just a total loss. So what's increasingly clear is that mitigation can result in meaningful decreases in loss, which when done at scale can positively impact the availability and affordability of insurance for consumers. Next slide. So this IBHS Wildfire Prepared Home program is fairly new, and so this is just highlighting the first home that was designated wildfire prepared, and it's in the town of Paradise, California, which suffered the devastating Camp Fire in 2018. And now the town is actually taken the step to require, and changing their local ordinance to require all new and rebuilt homes to meet and maintain this wildfire prepared home designation. Next slide, please. In just January of 2023, a home also in California was the first to receive the upgraded Wildfire Prepared Plus designation, and that includes some additional mitigation actions like covering your gutters, upgrading windows and doors, and then the use of non-combustible siding as well. The next slide. And then just in March of this year, there was a new community built by KB Homes in California that was the first to be recognized as an IBHS wildfire resilient neighborhood. And in California, what we've seen is the difference in cost to build a home to this new wildfire prepared standard is less than $3,000. And that's a fairly small amount when you compare it to the cost of later retrofitting a home to upgrade all of these features to make them more wildfire resilient. And so we're seeing, because of that kind of minimal difference in cost, some commitments of volume home builders in the West that are committing to build new homes in communities to the IBHS standard. Next slide, please. So this just highlights that you can take actions to your home and structures, but it also is important to look at landscaping as a way to meaningfully reduce risk. And there have been some studies and contests that have looked for innovative and affordable ideas for homeowners to try and reduce their wildfire risk while still preserving some level of attractiveness. And the use of stone, stucco, as you can imagine, metal, gravel, and then drought-tolerant plants and landscaping are some of those elements. Next slide, please. I just have about 3 more slides left, and then we can get to more of your questions too. So recognizing that the IBHS Wildfire Prepared Home Program that I just discussed is more suited sort of for suburban or more densely populated areas, we also look at the Firewise USA program, and this may be more specifically applicable to parts of Wyoming where farm and ranch properties exist and face some more unique vulnerabilities. And so these properties often are spanning larger areas and have multiple structures and equipment, stored crops. So this program, developed by the National Fire Protection Association, NFPA, utilizes a layered approach when thinking about a reduction in risk. with the most stringent fuel reduction in the area directly around structures, and then becoming less restrictive the further out you go from like the home or main buildings. So in that immediate zone of 0 to 5 feet, it means keeping the area non-combustible and removing vegetation and flammable materials. And that has been shown to significantly reduce ignition risk. Then at the intermediate zone, 5 to 30 feet, it calls for strategic placing of trees and shrubs, clearing dead vegetation, and helping to slow the fire spread and prevent fire from climbing into tree canopies. And then the extended zone, 30 to 100 or more feet away, the program calls for thinning vegetation, maintaining access routes for emergency responders, and those types of efforts. So we support efforts to expand education and assistance for landowners to help implement these types of proven strategies. Next slide, please. This slide just shows current Firewise USA sites that are considered in good standing as of today. Well, not today, but a few days ago. There are a number of sites across Wyoming, from here in the Cheyenne area to Lander, Du Bois, and others. Next slide, please. And then following on our discussion of home hardening and defensible space and the Firewise USA program, it's important to recognize that wildfire resistance and resilience must extend beyond the home. And this is especially true for those farms and ranches. Vegetation management, like forest thinning and prescribed burns, are essential to help reduce wildfire intensity and protect properties. And federal, state, local cost share programs, incentives, and support in that type of way can help landowners implement those strategies. I'll highlight two things that were done at the federal level recently that are really going to hopefully have a positive impact here. There's a Fix Our Forest Act has been introduced in Congress that is aimed at improving forest health and reducing wildfire risks by streamlining timely environmental reviews and designating high fire risk fire sheds for targeted management. And then the US EPA also recently issued guidance that gives states more regulatory flexibility in their air quality plans that could help encourage the use of prescribed burns, recognizing them as an essential tool for wildfire mitigation and then forest health as well. So together, like home hardening combined with community level efforts and vegetation management help create really a kind of comprehensive mitigation strategy. Next slide, please. Final two slides here, and I'll just briefly touch on this. The National Association of Counties has a website that maintains also a lot of resources and strategies and case studies to help county and local leaders implement wildfire mitigation and help build community resilience in their neighborhoods. Next slide. And so finally, this is a slide that really highlights several options to help consumers build wildfire resilience. And we strongly support funding and incentives at the state, federal, and local levels to help encourage mitigation efforts. So some examples include grant programs. I think we heard examples of those types of efforts earlier today. Low interest loans for resilience projects, or even integrating mitigation costs for a property into a mortgage that can be spread out over 20 or 30 years. Local governments can offer rebates or waive or reduce building permit fees to help lower the cost of inspection for properties that earn these qualified resilience designations. And then there are certain tax incentives that could also play a role. Federal income tax credits for retrofitting costs, sales tax exemptions for mitigation materials, or property tax credits for homes that achieve and maintain certain resilience standards. And so communities really should focus on trying to emphasize kind of a basket of different approaches to try and help consumers and property owners implement these strategies. We've also seen that homes that are mitigated have other benefits in addition to lowering wildfire risk. They often have higher property resale values, improved insurability, and can have reduced loss costs if a disaster does strike. So we're actively collaborating with other industries, lenders, builders, the real estate industry, to promote the importance of mitigation and the available resources for property owners. And then finally, in the last points on this slide, just to help consumers better mitigate and manage disaster risk, insurers generally support a three-pronged approach. So one being pre-disaster mitigation to reduce the risk and exposure, risk sharing through the use of catastrophe deductibles, and then tools like tax-advantaged savings accounts that can help them cover disaster-related expenses. So next slide, final here. So just in closing, addressing wildfire challenges requires really a collaborative effort, and ultimately the best solution to address wildfire risk and help ensure availability and affordability of insurance lies in these robust science-based mitigation standards that are at both the individual and community levels. So the IBHS Wildfire Prepared program that I discussed and Wildfire USA, those programs help demonstrate that steps can be taken to significantly reduce wildfire risk and improve insurability. So again, thank you for your time here today and for having us. And we look forward to working with Wyoming on these important issues going forward.
So Ethan, thank you so much. Karen, appreciate your input to this. Any questions? Any questions? Okay. Representative Harrelson,
Thank you,
please.
Mr. Chairman. One other thing real quick, something we've seen, we actually saw this up in Campbell County quite a bit. When insurance companies have large insured assets that are in a wildfire zone, we've seen where insurers are sending in private firefighting personnel to help protect assets. And one of the things we're looking at, and this has actually kind of been addressed this last year a little bit, but is something we're still wanting to keep an eye on, is just that the counties and these private assets have proper communication. And so that's something, just put it on your radar as you guys talk about it, because we appreciate the protection of these assets, but at the same time, it'd be horrendous if we were to have an incident where one of these individuals was out of communication and didn't understand maybe a weather event coming in or something of that nature, where our counties have the ability to help protect these private wildland firefighters. So just keep that on your radar as well. And also, if you want to speak at all to that, I'd appreciate it. If you guys, I don't know if you guys do that personally, but just what your experience is. And it's something that we've seen across the state that we want to just keep a handle on and work in conjunction with our counties.
Mr. Chairman and Representative, again, thank you for that question and insight. That's not something that I was particularly familiar with, and I appreciate you bringing it to my attention. And certainly something to keep in mind, that collaboration and coordination seems critical to ensuring smooth and effective firefighting resources and implementation. I'd ask Karen, do you have anything you'd like to add?
Yeah, so I've worked closely. I've had several conversations. I think probably the main organization that is probably the most widespread is Wildfire Defense Systems or Services, WDS. And yeah, they've been scaling up a lot of their operations, not just in the US, but even in Canada and I think some other countries, as they are trying to offer more strike forces, essentially, or resources as that impending threat is approaching. Again, the most meaningful mitigation, and science has proven this again and again, is removing the fuel. And we want to do that, of course, well in advance of an imminent threat through pre-disaster mitigation, but in going in as that threat becomes known and removing that fuel through defensible space clearing, removing pine needles off of roofs, removing any leaves and debris or combustible items from around the home. They do go into these areas and try to do some of that in that final few minutes of time that might be available to do that. As you note, and we see this in California, elsewhere, communication with officials is absolutely imperative, because we do not want them to go in and have them become at risk that then takes other resources away. And so I know that they are aware of that concern, and they are working to improve that. We as an industry don't necessarily control that. We do have properties that are, I believe, covered by their services. But as we continue to have conversations with them, we can certainly re-elevate that. But I know that concern is something that they are aware of, and they are trying to improve and streamline upon that as well.
Good. Well, again, I want to thank you, Ethan and Ms. Collins, Karen. Appreciate all the information that you have given us. And so thank you for coming today. And I'll open it up for any public comment that anyone here, Karen, anyone online with regard to public comment on this issue?
Mr. Chairman, nobody has indicated online.
Okay. Well then, committee, what I would suggest, we've been working pretty straightforward and hard through, let's take a 15-minute break and come back and finish our business. Thanks.
Thank you.
Okay, I'll bring this meeting of the Appropriations Committee back to order. We're now on committee directives. Let me repeat that, directives. I'm open to anyone on the committee with regard to directives. Let me start with Representative Smith.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Without objection, I would propose the committee request a bill draft to be considered at JAC's winter budget hearing to, one, divert 5.6% of the accrued sales and use tax collected each fiscal year for the total statewide 4% sales and use tax as calculated by the Department of Revenue from amounts deposited into the general fund. Also to direct the funds to the Office of State Lands and Investments for distribution to cities, towns, and counties in accordance with the same distribution model used in the fiscal year 2025 and 2026 biennium, the so-called Madden formula, except with 1/2 of the fiscal year payments made on October 15th and 1/2 made on March 15th.
So did LSO get that?
Yes, Mr. Chairman.
Without objection?
I'll second that.
Okay, well, thank you. We don't need a second. It's just a request for a bill draft. Again, members of the committee, these are bill drafts. I think this is the beginning of a process, but we have to start somewhere. And so we're starting with these bill drafts, and there will be plenty of discussions, I imagine, in the weeks and months ahead with regard to where we end up finally. So thank you, Representative Smith. The LSO has that directive. Anyone else? Anyone else? Representative Harrelson?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and if you don't mind, if I could have just a little bit of leeway here, you guys will all have a handout on your desk that says Forestry Conservation Program titled October 2025. This is a piece of information that came out of our tour of the Newcastle facility, and at that time, we saw a couple things that I feel are in need of directives. And so if we look at this, one of the things that we saw, and I probably should have had this conversation earlier, but I believe this is a good time. One of the things I saw is our smoke buster crew, the team that is helping lead that in state forestry have done a phenomenal job, but they're thin. And as we've continued to say, hey, we want to see more of this team. We want to see this improve. We want to see this increase. I think on the backside, Kelly and her amazing team is sitting there going, I don't think you understand. You can only spread the butter so thin. And so if you look at this, you're going to see one of the conversations we had is we believe that smoke buster team could ultimately become a career path into our heli teams, into our potential future modules, those types of things. And so we feel that we are looking at more of a long game here. And so with that, without objection, I would propose that the committee consider at our next JAC hearing in December, and that LSO would help us draft a bill draft that would authorize 2 additional inmate module leaders, these FTEs, within the Office of State Lands and Investment, the State Forestry Division, with a staggered effective date to begin building for an additional smoke buster hand crew and also be depth of bench for our current crew. The first FTE would start July 1st, 2026. The second FTE would start July 1st, 2027, with a total amount of $750,000, of which $500,000 would be a one-time authorization for these 2 FTEs. And obviously, we give leeway to our LSO staff and state forestry as they work the numbers through that. But these 2 individuals would have the intention to help build depth of bench for our current team, start getting brought into that 4.5-year window as they move into getting trained up. And then ultimately down the road, we would love to see this maybe birth into a second hand crew of inmates after we make sure we have the depth of bench required to make that reality. And so we would just, as we look at that would be through DOC, State Forestry, and just everyone working together to make that reality.
Without objection. LSO, good to go? Okay. Anyone else? Anyone else? Yes, Representative Angelos.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Without objection, after we had that nice little, our diagram that we have here, I would like to propose the committee to request a bill draft from JAC that this would authorize the creation of one module based on the proposed wildland fire suppression module, as we've been discussing, this interim with the Office of State Lands and Investments, State Forestry Division. This module will have a total of 12 positions, of which 2 are full-time employees and 10 will be seasonal employees. The total cost will be $1,580,000, of which $500,000 is a one-time expense. And I would also direct staff to coordinate with State Forestry on language and numbers, whatever you need. Thank you.
Without objection. LSO, does that make sense? Okay, good. Again, I want to emphasize these are bill drafts. This is the beginning of a journey and a conversation, but we need to start somewhere. Anyone else? Yes, Representative Sherwood.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and thank you to the committee. I would like to make a request. I believe this at this point is just for information, to understand how we would go about reclassifying our foresters to then be considered firefighters, wildland firefighters. This would be for us to understand what it would take to be competitive with the federal benefits offered by agencies like the BLM. So I'd love information to include what it would look like to offer paid days after the 14-day fire assignment, inclusion in the firefighter pension plan B, and hazard pay. Thank you.
Okay, I think that's been sent. Is there anyone else? Anyone else? Mr. Co-Chair, any comments before we end until picking up in December?
I would. Thank you, Mr. Co-Chair. To the forester and firefighters that have come here and invested time in this effort this summer, I really do appreciate your work. I hope you know that we've heard you clearly. I mentioned earlier that I consider myself and many of my colleagues to be budget hawks and fiscal conservatives, and we see your work as an essential part of government and one of the requirements that we need to meet for our citizens. And so here we are doing what I would consider growing government. But I think this is appropriate, and I'm committed to helping you do your jobs. And I think providing a new state-level ground crew, although it's not everything that you would like to have, I think it's a good opportunity for us to show that we can walk before we begin to run. And since we are always prognosticating and can never really tell what the next fire season is going to look like, I'm hopeful that this will make our ground assets match our air assets and help us to have a better understanding of how we should invest in the future. So I know that there's many more requests and many more needs within the department, but this is an opportunity for us to do something, and I think it's the right thing. So I'm pretty excited about this bill draft. It's going to be a lot of work to get it across the finish line, and we're going to continue to need your support as we do that. But that is our work, and I think we're prepared to do it. Thank you.
Senator Guru.
Thanks, Mr. Chairman. Just to build on the good co-chair's remarks, we've heard a lot in this space, and I think what I heard, what the bill drafts that have been asked for reflect is that we're keeping our options open. We're looking at short-term solutions. We're looking at longer-term solutions. That it's not an either-or. It could complement each other as it moves forward, but it's not, we'll see how it plays out. And I'm just speaking for myself, not the whole group, but I think I can say with a fair degree of self-assurance that I don't think the committee is looking at it that way as an either-or. The committee's looking at it a way, how can we build this? And then with what Representative Sherwood said, I think was an acknowledgement when you talk about the numbers at 40% turnover rate, and how much it costs to train these folks and then to lose them and what the circumstances are. I think there's a willingness in the committee to take a look at that. We know there's a cost, but there's also a cost of having to retrain employees every year. And so we're really going to be looking to try to ferret out with you all professionals about how that plays. So I think everything's still on the table, and I think that it's a good start, a good tee up. And I hope it reflects that, at least I know that this group is listening very carefully to what we've been hearing the last couple of months. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Yep. Mr. Vice Chairman.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Great comments. I agree fully, and I think it's really fun to see us being proactive and getting out in front of it. A huge thanks to you, Kelly, and all your staff and what you guys have done. And another one is, Jeremy, thank you very, very much for your leadership and what you've done. It takes a lot of work to put all this together, and it's kind of fun to see it. I kind of tried to bounce an idea off him yesterday, and he already had it all fleshed out and all done, and it's kind of fun to see people getting ahead of it all. And, I think we're going to put the state in a better place because of this. This is Chairman Bear made a statement about expansion of government, and he doesn't generally like it, but this is time. There's times you spend money to make money for the state, and this is one of them. And it's one that I'm proud to be a part of. I've never been huge on adding piles of people, but this is time that, you do things to actually make the state better and make it a better place. And by the way, it makes all our communities better. This isn't a deal that makes the state better. It makes all of the state better, including our communities. So thanks much to everybody for the help on it. It's fun to see this committee all working together. We're finding some stuff we can find common ground on. Hopefully we get a bunch more going through markup. Thanks.
Anyone else? Anyone else? Let me make a comment with regard to the developmental disability waiver, because I know there's a lot of people listening with much testimony that we had yesterday. We're going to address that within the budget bill. It will not be a separate bill, so we haven't forgotten you. And I think the comments that were expressed yesterday indicate clearly where the committee is going. With that, is there anyone else who would like to make a comment before we adjourn? I want to thank the Joint Appropriations Committee. I want to thank my co-chair for the hard work, and I look forward on December 1st to continuing to work. Thank you.